Chapter 2 Magi Lune. Krista sped back towards Python Rock. Long shafts of golden sunlight now streaked the forest, and she realized she wandered a long way from home.
It's later than I thought,
she muttered to herself.
Now I am in trouble. I've missed dance class again. Rose Myrtle will be furious.
But she didn't go home. Instead, she crossed the creek at Python Rock, turned left at Fossil Bend, and headed into a mist-shrouded Antarctic beech tree forest. Krista loved this corner of the forest, for she knew it was bursting with ancient secrets. Like Magi Lune, the trees that grew here were very old. Most of them were decorated with long, trailing fingers of soft lichen, which shimmered a ghostly green in the hazy light. After flying for a while, she came to the oldest stand of Antarctic beech trees. In front of them slept two enormous cassowaries. They were Ak and Rock, Magi Lune's minders. When they heard Krista, they unwound their long necks from under their wings and opened their bleary eyes.
Oh, who goes there? Hi, Krista. Okay, what's the password?
Answer quick or out you go,
mumbled Rock.
State your name, Krista,
said Ak importantly.
And the password,
added Rock.
Please, Chris, we hardly ever get a chance to use the password.
Oh, come on, you guys.
All right.
is Ginnitz?
She said, saying the first word she could think of.
Is that the password?
Asked Rock.
Sounds fine to me,
added Ak, scratching the bone on top of his head.
See you later,
called Krista.
See you later. Could that be it?
Asked Ak.
Bye,
said Krista.
Bye! That's it!
He shouted.
You dumb bonehead!
Groaned Rock.
Bye's not the password.
Don't call me a bonehead, you great big useless lump of feathers!
Squawked Ak. While the two birds quarreled, Krista slipped past them, stepping over a carpet of golden leaves to enter the inner circle of trees. Light streamed through arched openings, which were filled with sparkling dew-covered spider webs and delicate butterfly wings, creating a kaleidoscope of soft colors. The entrance to Magi Lune's house lay behind a cluster of delicate tree orchids. Krista tugged on a well-worn vine that hung beside the moss-covered door. While she waited for the door to open, she smoothed her crumpled leotard and ran her fingers through her dark, unruly hair. She hoped Magi Lune wasn't asleep, but it was always hard to tell. The old fairy kept different hours to everyone else. She lived her life by the phases of the moon. Krista wondered if this was the reason the fairies and elves of FernGully thought she was crazy. The door swung open, and Krista peered inside. In one corner of the darkened hollow, Maggie sat on a roughly carved stool in front of a cluttered bench. Her long-petaled robes hung to the floor, covering her feet. A glowworm lantern flickered faint light over an unfurled parchment scroll. Krista saw that Maggie was staring into a tiny diamond-shaped crystal. "Hello, sweet wings," Maggie said, without taking her eyes off the crystal. "You got here faster than I expected. Come closer. I want you to look into this crystal and tell me what you see." Krista fluttered over to Maggie, but when she looked into the crystal, it was cloudy. She couldn't see a thing. "That's what I'm worried about," sighed the old fairy, fossicking through the pockets of her robe. Finding a strand of spider webbing, she twisted it between her thin fingers and tied back her mop of wild hair to stop it falling in her eyes. "I've sat up day and night trying to understand what this means," she said. "For the first time in my life, the future is unclear."
Maggie, the frogs think Hexus is back in this forest and working the weather.
Krista whispered.
Could it be true?
"Hexus!" spluttered Maggie, knocking over a basket of Green River stones as she turned to face Krista. And just what do you know about Hexus? Krista frowned.
Not much, except what I remember from the fairy legends and what old Potsy told me.
Maggie looked at Krista thoughtfully. Some things are best forgotten, she muttered, floating away from the bench and flopping into a soft feather chair. Krista followed her and sat on a low mushroom stool by her feet. When Maggie finally spoke, her voice sounded different, as if she was traveling back in time to some long-forgotten place. Krista, remember how I've told you that within us all is the power to create or destroy? Well, the story of Hexus is a story of destruction. The old fairy closed her eyes and was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, she sounded tired, as though the memory of Hexus weighed heavily on her mind. You see, Krista, Hexus was the spirit of destruction. You could even say he was born to destroy. His part in the web of life was to get rid of the old to make way for the new. But as Hexus grew, he realized what incredible power he held. And he knew that if he wanted to, he could use that power to end all life. And so he introduced fear into a world that knew no fear. From that day on, Hexus turned into the most dangerous and evil monster the world has ever known. He worked the weather and brewed up unnatural storms. He could change his shape and size and become whatever he wanted to be, and this made him almost impossible to recognize. He began to kill life as fast as it grew, upsetting the very balance of nature. He had to be stopped before he destroyed us all.
Oh, Maggie, was it you who stopped him?
Asked Krista wide-eyed.
Did you work the old powers?
Maggie nodded. I was young then. Hexus and I had a terrible battle. The forest was ripped apart. Too many lives were lost. Her hooded eyes glistened with tears, and her voice dropped to a whisper. Yes, in the end, I did defeat Hexus. You see, Krista, the love I felt for this forest gave me a power Hexus knew nothing about. And nothing he threw at me could weaken that power. The stronger I got, the weaker he became, until he was just a dark, wispy shadow. I eventually trapped him in the roots of a huge old tree at the foot of Mount Warning. The mountain and the trees have guarded him day and night ever since. Krista stared at Magi Lune.
Could he ever escape?
She whispered fearfully. No. There isn't a force in nature that could release Hexus now, Magi replied firmly. No. The trouble I feel at present is different. Magi Lune pulled herself out of her chair and floated outside. Krista followed close behind her. Krista, I think the time has come to begin the teaching I promised. We must try to turn your curiosity into knowledge. Trailing behind her, Krista watched the forest respond to Magi's presence. Flowers opened as she passed. The butterflies fluttered around her. Birds began to sing, and even the moss turned greener when she floated by. Krista wished that she could float in the air without using her wings. Magi chuckled, reading her mind. There's more to magic than floating, she said. Next, she defied gravity by rising vertically into the air. You know how to do all these things. You've just forgotten, she told Krista. Once upon a time, there wasn't a fairy alive who didn't know all the magic there was to know. The trouble is, when life gets too easy, there's not the same need for magic, so it gets forgotten along the way. But no matter how hard she tried, Krista couldn't float in the air without using her wings. In fact, she couldn't do most of the things Maggie asked her to do. She couldn't invisible herself, and she couldn't even perform the simplest changing spell. Finally, Maggie showed her the plant she used for healing, and when the lesson was over, Krista realized how little she knew about anything. But Maggie told her not to lose heart. "You'll find your own way if you practice," she assured her. "Remember, there is little I can teach you that you don't already know. But once you care for others, your magic powers will grow." Excited, Krista left Magi Lune's house, eager to get home. But she didn't go far before she ran into trouble.